Hey, this is Ken Rosever, and we're looking at problem number 22 in section 4.3 in your textbook. And I thought this would be a great one to show you two slightly different methods of solving this problem. Let me do this one first. Whenever you're solving a rational equation, it's important at the get-go to establish what restrictions on solutions are imposed by the denominators. So since we have an x minus 3 down here, we know that we cannot have 0 in the denominator, so therefore x cannot equal 3. Over here we have x by itself, so the denominator cannot equal 0. X is the denominator, so x can't equal 0. So our restrictions are x cannot equal 0 or 3. It doesn't matter what way you solve it, you should always make a note of the restrictions that are imposed by the denominator at the beginning of a problem when you're solving rational equations. Well, my next thing I want to do is find the least common denominator. Here it's x times x minus 3. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to multiply each term by 1 so that all the denominators will match, but I'm going to choose the right one. So what do I mean by the right one? I mean here I want the denominator to say x times x minus 3. Right now it just says x minus 3. So I'm going to introduce an x here and another x there. And what's x over x? It's 1, so I just essentially multiply this term by 1. And I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to create common denominators. So this has a 4 and an x. I need to multiply that by 1 to create the LCD. What's missing? X minus 3. So I'm going to multiply by x minus 3 over x minus 3, which is 1, and that is the right one. That's the one I want so that these denominators will match. Well, now I have negative 6, so let me go plus negative 6 over 1, if that helps. And this has neither the x nor the x minus 3, so it's going to require the introduction of both. And if I do it to the bottom to create a denominator, I have to do it to the top, to the numerator as well, equals 0. And that can just be left alone. So I'm just multiplying each term by 1 to create common denominators. So now I'll have 2x squared plus 4x minus 12 minus 6x squared plus 18x all over, because all these denominators will match, x times x minus 3. So I just multiplied that, distributed that, and they're all over the same denominator, so I can just combine them up top, equal to 0. Combining like terms, we get negative 4x squared plus 22x minus 12 all over x times x minus 3 equals 0. Now at this point, if you were going to solve a rational inequality, later on you'd want to keep this x over x minus 3 around, but we don't have to here. There's no need for it. We're not going to set up a sign chart in a little bit, so if you want, you can get rid of this now. I like you guys to practice though keeping it around, because we do problems with sign charts. So these guys cancel out, and then what do you have? Negative 4x squared plus 22x minus 12 equal to 0. 0 times that is still 0. All right, continuing here, I'm going to divide out any common factors I have. Negative 2, negative 2, negative 2, negative 2 equals 0. 2x squared minus 11x plus 6. So now, what am I looking for? Let me zoom in a little. I'm looking for two factors of a times c. 2 times 6 is 12, that add to negative 11, which is b. And I know you could be thinking, some of you, that the two factors are 1 and negative 12. But 1 times negative 12, yes, that adds to negative 11, but 1 times negative 12 is negative 12, and we're given a positive 12 here, right? So that won't work. In fact, this is prime, and the only way you're going to solve this is completing the square or the quadratic formula. So let's do quadratic formula. X is equal to negative b, so it's 11 plus or minus the square root of negative 11 squared minus 4 times 2 times 6, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So you get 11 plus or minus 121 minus 48 over 4, which is 11 plus or minus, let's see, that's 52 away from 100. 52 plus 21 is 73, so square root of 73 over 4. So that's actually your two answers. 11 minus the square root of 73 over 4, or 11 plus the square root of 73 over 4. And both of those solutions are valid because they do not violate the restrictions we had way up at the top, that x cannot equal 0 or 3. Alright, so now that's one way of solving it. The other way you could solve it is just a little different. Instead of finding the LCD and making all these denominators match, because we're not going on to solve the inequality, you still find the restrictions, but after you find the LCD, you just multiply through by the LCD. So let me write each term. And let me show you what I mean by that. Alright, so we're going to multiply each term by the LCD. So what was the LCD? It was this. Let me trim this a little bit. There we go. So if I multiply the first term by that LCD, you see the x minus 3 and the x minus 3 would cancel, and you'd be left with 2x times x. If you multiply the second term by the LCD, the x and the x would cancel, and you'd be left with plus 4 times x minus 3. Minus 6 has nothing on the bottom to cancel, so it would be minus 6 times x minus 3. And if you do it to the left side, you have to do it the right side, but the right side is 0, and 0 times anything is 0. So there you go. That eliminates the denominator altogether. And you can do this whenever the equation equals 0. Alright, anyway, so you get 2x squared plus 4x minus 12 minus 6x squared plus 18x equals 0, which you'd combine your like terms. You get your 22x minus 12 equals 0. And then that should look familiar because we had that right over here. Alright. Divide everything by negative 2, negative 2, negative 2, negative 2. Same thing I did before. 2x squared minus 11x plus 6 equals 0. And then you do quadratic formula, and you get what we got before, which was 11 minus square root of 73 over 4. 11 plus square root of 73 over 4. Again, when you're solving an equation, I don't care so much which way you solve it. If you want to do it this way, that's awesome. If you want to do it this way, that's great. Just keep in mind, though, you need to know this skill over here, even though we can avoid it on equations by multiplying by the LCD. All right, even though we can avoid that, making common denominators, it's still an important skill to have. Let me just make one last point about this LCD. I want you to notice that what I ended up multiplying by here was x, and that is what was missing from the bottom. You see that? The x was missing. What's missing here? The x minus 3, and what did I end up multiplying by? An x minus 3. What's missing here? everything. So what did I end up multiplying 6 by? Everything. And so when you're solving these things, when you multiply by the LCD, what ends up being left on top is what was missing on the bottom. All right, I hope that helps you. That's it for this video. 2 ways. Try them. Know one.